Totally Football Show today. Midweek music in the Champions League. City on song. Milan put out a tune. And Man United with the worst performance in the group since Kerry Katona. We round up the final match day. One that saw Barcelona losing and Celtic winning. Then check out the Premier League weekend. Your Arsenal Brightons. Your Liverpool Man Uniteds. Your TV's unhealthy obsession with showing the Hammers Sunday lunchtime. All that and somehow still more in this Totally Football Show. Okay. The Totally Football Show. Boom. And off we go with a brand new show. This one's coming to you from the morning of Thursday, the 14th of December. The dust settling on the last ever Champions League group stage around us as we're joined by Duncan Alexander.
Hello.
Charlie Eccleshare.
Hello.
And Raphael Honigstein.
Hello.
Hello, Raphael.
So nice to see you.
Well, it is nice to see you, and you listener, in a sense, really. Charlie, we've got you for a good time, but not a long time.
Let's make it count.
All right, you're off to see Ange Postecoglou.
Very much so.
Right, and you're going to play a key role in this morning's press conference ahead of Friday night's clash with Forest. What question are you going to ask Ange?
It's a good question. I will...
You haven't thought?
No, I'll mull it over on the way there and have a little chat with some of my colleagues beforehand.
Right.
Can't give it away now, anyway.
Yeah, he might be listening.
Exactly.
Exactly. Alrighty. Excellent. Well, so much to look forward to. I've got one or two questions myself prepared for this show, and they regard, to begin with, the Champions League, which this week had its match day 6 with 4 places in the knockout stages still to be settled. 2 Premier League sides sweating over their chances of springtime European fun. Tuesday, Man United, their run came to an end with a whimper, beaten at home by Bayern. They finished bottom of the group. It's Copenhagen who goes through alongside FC Bayern, thanks to the Danes' 1-0 win at Parken over Galatasaray, who themselves take third. Wednesday, Newcastle also finished bottom of the group, with Milan winning 2-1 at St James's, but PSG going through with Dortmund after the 1-1 draw away in Germany for the Parisians. Wild night of action across those 2 games. We'll come on to it very shortly. The draw for the last 16 is on Monday morning. There'll only be 2 English sides in it. 2. Crikey. City, who won 3-1 in Belgrade on, what was that, Wednesday against Crvena Zvezda.
3-2.
Was it 3-2? City, who won 3-2 in Belgrade against Crvena Zvezda to make it 6 wins out of 6 for Pep's side. Goals from academy graduates Micah Hamilton and Oscar Bob, and also their bright young prospect Calvin Phillips. Arsenal also finished off in some sort of style. They had a 1-1 draw away at PSV Eindhoven. Both of those 2 teams are already through, and Lens taking third in that group. I mention that because it means that Sevilla, who got beaten at the Bollard by Lens, are out of Europe altogether, not in the Europa League. Woo! Shock faces.
Opens it up.
Certainly does. Elsewhere, midweek, what else happened? Well, Napoli claimed their place in the last 16 with a 2-0 win over Braga. Porto also made it through, beating Shakhtar Donetsk. They'll be in the knockout stages the 14th time in the last 21 seasons, as Richard Pike points out. Thank you, Richard. That was quite a game, that, wasn't it? 5-3 against Shakhtar. The other game in that group saw Antwerp, most improbably, beating Barcelona 3-2 with Spurs' very own Vincent Janssen. Well, not very own anymore, but, you know.
One of their own.
One of their own, yeah. He was on the score sheet. That's right. And also on Wednesday, Celtic, who hadn't won an actual Champions League game since 2017, managed to get a victory on their 16th attempt in a dead rubber at home to Feyenoord. Well done to the Hoops. Let's concentrate on Premier League's making a mess of it. First time that 2 English clubs have finished bottom of a group in the same season. Previously, in fact, in the history of this competition, only 3 English sides had ever finished in last place in a group.
Blackburn, back in the fighting each other era.
United did it, didn't they?
In that awful
05,
group, and there was about
06.
3 goals in the entire thing. And then Man City.
Man City?
Yeah.
Who would have thought? Under Roberto Mancini.
Yeah.
Doing a
after
run
the
as
league.
Roberto Mancini.
Yeah. But it is, I mean, I was thinking this week, what else could the Premier League do in the soon-to-be departed Champions League group that they hadn't done before? And lo and behold, 2 teams finishing bottom.
Well, Newcastle at least made a brave stab at it. And for a good half hour or so, I think, on Wednesday, we're going through in second place.
was quite weird, their approach, I thought, because they really went for it towards the end. I mean, it was great to watch because it was two teams just desperate to win, which you don't often see. But they could have just taken that draw and taken the Europa League. I was slightly surprised that they were playing as if they were going out with a draw.
Yeah.
Which they weren't. They could have sat back, taken the point, gone through to the Europa
But with a
League.
win...
But a win would have gotten Champions League, sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, the way they... So I can see why they wanted to win.
Yeah.
But they were playing as if it was all or nothing, which it wasn't.
Oh.
But maybe their medical staff were going, please, no Europa League, please.
I do slightly wonder that. There are certainly some clubs, I wouldn't put Newcastle in that bracket, but there are some clubs whose supporters anyway would say, I'd probably go out of Europe altogether rather than have a playoff for the Europa League knockouts.
I can imagine that with PSG not looking in any way dominant at Signal Iduna Park, although actually, now I say that, how many chances do they have?
18, I think.
18 shots.
look
But they were
pretty
PSGing
dominant.
it up, basically. They went behind. They did pull one back through the wonderful Warren Zaire-Emery. But the draw meant that a victory for Newcastle, and they had their chances too. A goal line clearance from Tomori, the one off the crossbar on that.
They did, but the goal they conceded comes from Shah basically bombing forward,
don't
completely
see a set-
vacating his position, and then they get counted on and concede. So they might be thinking now, could we have, gone for the win, but maybe not completely just chucked everything at the win.
Right.
You rarely see a centre-half playing a 1-2. Well, there it was.
Still, when they were 1-0 up especially, maybe they could have reined it in a little bit after that thunderstrike from Joe Ellington. I'm comparing this to their recent performances, though, when they looked dead on their feet against Everton and Spurs. It was a remarkably lively showing that they put in.
Yeah, I mean, and they've still got so many games coming up because they're still in the League Cup as well. So there's no respite for them. At least, I guess, they're getting a few players back. But no, it was a hugely entertaining game just because of that very unusual game state where both teams seemed absolutely just hell-bent on getting a goal one way or the other.
What a moment at the end as well when Newcastle, desperate for the win, desperate for an equaliser at that point, threw their goalkeeper up. Martin Dubravka racing upfield to try and take advantage of a corner. The corner failed to go anywhere near him. Milan get the ball. All of a sudden, there's an empty net. It was like an ice hockey game.
Yeah, but Theo Hernandez unfortunately missed a shot.
It was a really bad.
It was a really weird
Really
effort.
It was like, it reminded me of, when fans at half time can try and win a car by hitting the crossbar. It was one of those.
Yeah. It wouldn't have made any difference, an extra goal for Milan, because with PSG drawing away in Dortmund, there was no way that Milan could take second spot. A draw in Dortmund would have been enough had Newcastle got the win, but, they didn't. Nick Pope's injury, possibly the crucial factor in their Champions League campaign, because...
I think Newcastle can at least go out with, their heads held high. It was a brave first foray back into the Champions League, and I think they'll all hope that they can get back there. And I think maybe some other English clubs this week can't say that.
Although United gave us some of the most entertaining moments we've seen.
It was
in
entertaining.
the Champions League
I-
for a long time.
Credit to TNT Sports for on Twitter just doing here are all the goals Manchester United conceded in the group stage.
Wow, how long did that take?
It took a while, but
Well,
15
15.
goals.
It's as
It was
many as Chelsea
15.
let in the Premier League in 2004-05.
but it was just a great bit of content.
I think the worrying thing about Newcastle is that they're so far away from their previous version last year where they were all about super tight defending, strong cohesion. Teams found it so hard to get behind them, and now because the energy isn't quite there, because there's no substitutions, injuries, they are a bit of a soft touch, and games are much more open and entertaining as a result. I mean, the game we both saw at White Hart Lane was great, but I asked Eddie Howe after the game, how concerned was he that Newcastle are not really the Newcastle that we've come to respect last season, and he said, well, it's just a case of the moment and injuries, etc. He didn't want to think that there's something fundamentally wrong, but I think I'm worried a little bit about
They
the way
did
the
also
things are going.
benefit from not being in Europe last season and just having that one game a week routine. So maybe in the second half of the season, that coupled with players coming back, they can get back to that.
All clubs will point to injuries and misfortunes, but there has been a particularly difficult set of circumstances for Eddie Howe and Newcastle as they as they dealt with this first Champions League campaign do you think it's that, or do you think that in some way tactically they got a bit drunk on
they got into the Champions League too early, I'd say. Like, they didn't plan to be in it this season. Their squad isn't ready for it. I don't think possibly Eddie Howe was ready for it. They obviously had that big win against a dishevelled PSG, but that was they looked a bit naive in other games. People point to the penalty away at PSG, but I mean, again, how many chances did Paris create that night?
XG of 5 almost.
Mm.
Yeah.
Plus their lack of recent European pedigree worked against them for the draw. They were in the bottom seed and they got a particularly bad group. So they are mitigating circumstances.
Okay, mitigating circumstances for Man United, who were in a group with Copenhagen, Galatasaray and FC Bayern Munich. Less so.
Although I think the group in a way was trickier than it looked. Because I think Copenhagen have qualified. They're a decent side. And so are Galatasaray with all the talent that they have. So it looked, I think, easier than it was ultimately. And you saw Bayern struggle in quite a few of those games. So I understand Ten Hag saying that perhaps it isn't a disgrace that it looks like to finish bottom. But of course, when you spend as much money as they have and have an aspiration to go back to where Man United used to be at the very peak of European football, at least for a few good years, then, it's hugely demoralising.
We'll talk more about Man United very shortly and their visit to Anfield this weekend. Newcastle, meanwhile, will have Fulham on Saturday, which could be interesting because Fulham are in some form at the moment, averaging 4 goals a game over the last 4 matches, and Kieran Trippier will be suspended for that match again at St James's. Rafa, from the group of death as it was dubbed, it is Dortmund and PSG who go through. Dortmund through as winners and PSG as runners-up. What did you make of PSG and their prospects?
Hard to get a real handle on them because going forward, they're actually quite exciting. There's a lot of pace, a lot of movement. They created lots of chances in many games. You mentioned Newcastle last night. They could have easily scored 3 or 4 goals. But there is still that lack of balance. They still concede lots of chances, and it doesn't strike you as the best kind of prospect to go deep in the European Cup competition, where things tend to where things tend to tighten up towards the latter stages, and you need to be better in terms of having a balance. So I don't know. I'm not convinced that this new PSG and their new identity, etc., is really cut out to have very different results.
And Dortmund, how much trouble are they going to give?
I'm not sure because Dortmund, there's 2 Dortmunds. One Dortmund in domestic competition who are very flaky, continue to be very unpredictable and have had some awful games in the Bundesliga and in the Cup where they got knocked out. The Dortmund in the Champions League have ridden their luck occasionally. Certainly they did last night, but also have put all their best performances when the floodlights were on. So having won the group and maybe getting a little bit lucky in the last 16 round draw, you could see them getting into the quarterfinal. That's probably the extent of their capability. There's a lot of talk in Dortmund that they could do what Dortmund did in 2013 when they last made it to Wembley, which is to surprise everyone and go on this amazing run. Then they were also in a group of death which featured Mancini's Man City and won the group ahead of Ajax and Real Madrid, I think. Is that correct?
Okay.
Very strong group. Anyway.
With the final back at Wembley this time, you feel...
But do you want to find out? Or?
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Madrid came second, Ajax third.
Back then, they also won a group of death ahead of Real Madrid, Ajax, and the aforementioned Mancini, Man City. The difference being that was at the tail end of Jurgen Klopp's golden era, a team that had already won big things and was getting into the groove when it came to European football. I think this Dortmund team are not at the same level.
Okay, they made it to the final in 2013 when it was last at Wembley. The team that beat them there, of course, are FC Bayern, and may have ambitions of a trip to Nice again this coming May or early June or whenever it is.
The road to Nice.
The road.
Is it Neasden or Wembley?
It's kind of Neasden, isn't it? You certainly pass through
Close to Neasden.
Neasden. I think it's. I mean, it's. Let's not
Close
quibble
to
over, metropolitan boundaries. But speaking of FC Bayern, they're up next as we discuss their performance and the fallout thereof. Tuesday against Man United. Tuesday, FC Bayern already group winners, ending their group stage campaign with a 1-0 at Old Trafford. Kingsley Coman scoring the only goal of the game with a wonderful assist from Harry Kane. He's now got as many assists, Duncan.
At Old Trafford this season as Bruno Fernandes.
that can't be true.
I mean, I'm sure some Man United fans hope for that in the summer, but as it's transpired, maybe not.
Yeah, that 5-1 defeat away to Frankfurt on Saturday, I think didn't play into United's hands. Bayern and that dead rubber from their perspective, with a bit of extra motivation to show a different face, to banish all that talk about this team falling apart and not being good enough. And you could see it. I mean, they weren't perhaps at 100% in terms of pushing and trying to score lots of goals, but defensively they were very, very disciplined. They tried to work together as a team. There's a lot of commitment, a lot of tackles, a lot of running, and I think ultimately the better football team edged through in what was a game with very few clear-cut chances. I think both teams, even Ten Hag, who had to win on paper, not on paper, who had to win, played more as if he didn't want to lose heavily.
Right. Well, Charlie was suggesting almost that Newcastle wanted to win too much. Did it feel almost as if United didn't want it enough in the classic football?
I mean, the
parlance?
idea was to, I think, wait for Bayern to make a mistake and then play on the break. That's how they were set up. But that mistake never happened and the breaks never happened. And then when United had a bit more possession and pushed a bit more in the second half, they never really looked like scoring. And it's just that one measly shot on target from
Luke Shaw,
Luke Shaw from quite a distance, straight at Manuel Neuer.
In the 23rd minute.
And then nothing in the second half when they really
they had
had to
nothing
go
off the
for it.
bench, did they? They
Who did they bring off the bench, Rafa?
Pelistri, Mejbri, and Mainu.
Indeed. All right. A win.
And Johnny Evans.
yeah.
And Johnny Evans.
A win, as it turned out, wouldn't have helped United qualify, as the group's other game needed to finish in a draw for them to make second spot. It didn't. Copenhagen with the 1-0 win over Galatasaray. It would at least, though, have given United the fig leaf of Europa League. And there are so many issues. They need to improve at passing, shooting, etc. But, I mean, we can't ignore Onana's role in this. For all the problems that Ten Hag and the team have had, I can't recall seeing a team's European campaign quite so thoroughly undone by one individual before.
Well,
time and time again. The first game against Galatasaray, United were absolutely steaming.
First game was Bayern.
he made a
Sorry, the
penalty.
first game against Bayern, United looked great for the opening, and then until he threw in one of his, and then against Galatasaray, Copenhagen.
I mean, he did make that last-minute penalty save as well. So
Yeah, that's true.
And it's very curious this season in the sense that last year he had the best goals prevented rate in the Champions League.
Yeah.
This season, not at all.
But
he's got.
What's
he's
less curious
doing well
is
in
the fact
Premier
that the
League.
man who's replaced him at Inter, Matthias Sommer, is again racking up clean sheets.
I
in
know
Serie
what
A
you did, Jan
and Champions
Sommer.
League.
Yeah. And then United's, the Golden Glove holder from last season in the Premier League, it still doesn't have a
Kicking
club.
his heels. I mean, Andre Onana, I said in this very room in our pre-season preview that he'd be transformative for United. And I was right. I was absolutely right. He has been. He's been revelatory.
Explain why the events of this midweek, Rafa, were a major blow to England's hopes of securing a fifth Champions League spot in next season's new format.
Because they need all the points they can get to finish as one of the two top federations who will get an extra place. And
these
everyone
are points that you pick up for victories in the Champions League and Europa League and Conference League.
Points. Yeah, points, and then extra points for progressing later on in the knockouts. And there was a lot of confidence going into this, that because of the historic performances of these English teams, it was sort of kind of a given that they would do it. Now they've fallen behind. Where were they
Italy
in the position?
and
Italy
what?
and
Germany and
Germany.
Are they
Italy,
still
yeah.
third?
Yeah, they're fourth, I think.
Only
aren't they?
fourth.
I think they're still just
Oh, are
about
they just
third,
third?
but obviously we were recording this before the Europa and Conference
Yeah.
games.
Anyway, they've fallen behind,
Right.
And Italy have 7 teams left.
and Germany are first.
so
So it might not be enough to finish fifth after all.
yeah, but it does mean that you might see United and Spurs and Newcastle fans cheering on City and Liverpool and Villa and West Ham. I mean, probably I think if City won the Champions League again, Liverpool won the Europa League, probably be enough. Opta have got a predictive model around it, and after the last set of games, it was like 80% chance that the Premier League would be one of the federations getting an extra place. So I still believe.
In the magic of coefficients. It's a weird dynamic, because I mean, it's kind of a double whammy. If you're a supporter of Tottenham or something like that, not only are United and Newcastle out, and you'd think they'll now be better in the league with freer game weeks, but also it means this could contribute to there being one less space.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm quite troubled by the notion that top 4 is no longer a target for somebody who's not quite there for the title, but wants to have a prestigious season. Still, briefly, the new format will see no longer group stages, but
Massive league table
one massive family of teams.
based on chess.
How exactly will the new format take shape?
Well,
So there's 8 games
Yes.
against 8 different
One big
opponents.
group.
One big group, but they're seeded
Yes.
in 4 different sections,
Mm.
and then you will play 2 games against each section at random.
Okay.
So 8
Not
different.
complete random. They're not going to ring you up in the morning and go, "You've got to get to Copenhagen."
That would be brilliant.
That is true.
That would
is-
actually be
That would be
good.
amazing.
quite
and you
as
can't
random.
use your mobile phone or anything to get there,
Yeah.
to get to Galatasaray.
And then the winners, the first 8 teams qualify directly for knockout.
Okay.
The next 16 teams play a playoff to get into the knockout,
Mm-hmm.
and all the others are gone.
So the phrase "sneaking into the top 8" will become a thing from next season.
Absolutely.
I'm looking forward to that. There you go. Copenhagen are in the last 16 of this year's.
And sorry,
Mhm.
one interesting feature of all of this,
Oh, there is one?
there is one. In order to keep it competitive, even though you know pretty early on probably whether you're going to make the top 24 and will be still with a shout of qualifying, is that there will be a seeded system, not just for the knockout draw that follows, but throughout the tournament. So if you finish first and second, they will put you at different parts of the draw,
Ooh.
as in tennis.
Ah.
And that way,
Mm.
in theory,
Mm.
we should have bigger
City Real Madrid
games
final.
as we progress, which some will say takes away the romance of the obscure team that somehow falls through the cracks and ends up in a semi-final. At the same time, I think it's going to be pretty cool for the entertainment and quality.
The blockbuster value of the
Value.
later
I
stages.
think it's
yeah.
going to be fun for the first couple of years anyway, because it's just a bit different.
Mm.
I think 20 years of the current format felt a little bit tired by the
Well,
end.
one breath of fresh air are Copenhagen, who are into the last 16 for, I think, the first time in 12 years with that 1-0 win against Galatasaray. The Danes, for fans of such things, have a budget of about the 20th of that of Man United's. All right, Man United, next up, we'll be travelling to Anfield. We'll be looking at that and the rest of the Premier League weekend next. Woof. We've got, I make it 32 minutes with you, Charlie. Let's make them count. Premier League match day 17 starts on Friday evening. Forest hosting Spurs. Are you going to be there, Charlie?
I'm not actually.
Okay.
No, I can't make this one.
Sorry I asked. Saturday, there's only one game on TV. It's not Bournemouth Luton, nor is it Chelsea Sheffield United. Is it perhaps Man City against Crystal Palace? No. And neither is it Newcastle facing Fulham. No. It's Burnley Everton because Sean Dyche, Turf Moor.
Tough place to go.
I mean, it'll be an emotional return.
It will.
Sunday, similarly intriguing pick by the TV Supremos. Out of the 3 2:00 games, there's Arsenal, Brighton, Brentford, Aston Villa and West Ham Wolves. Which have they gone for?
West Ham Wolves.
That's correct. In the last month, games in the Sunday 2 p.m. slot to be broadcast live on Sky Sports have been West Ham Palace, West Ham Forest, and now West Ham Wolves.
There's your Olympic legacy.
Indeed.
Isn't this something that could change? Because as it stands, those games are still viewed in the same way as the 3 p.m. blackout games are. Because
that's part of the new
So that's going to change. So that will be good. So that suddenly these Sunday 2 p.m s, rather than just having West Ham televised, all of them will be.
The season after next. Liverpool 7, Man United 0 last March. 9 months later, Liverpool are leading the league, and Man United are more or less in the same old mess, maybe worse. Would you say?
Yeah,
Well,
but
they were okay before that game.
Well, they were. They were on. But that sort of period sort of summarises Ten Hag's United up. They did go on a good run, largely beating teams you'd expect them to beat, and then they had a tough away game, and it came crashing down. And I was on a few weeks ago and got a bit of half-hearted flack after they beat Everton for kind of questioning how significant their run of 5 wins from 6 was, because as soon as they play someone good away from home, they lose.
All right.
Basically. I mean, it is staggering. So the teams that came in the top 9 last season, other than United played 8 games.
Right.
How many points did they get from those 8 games?
None, is it?
1 point.
1 point.
And that 1 point came against a Spurs team who just lost 6-1 at Newcastle and were on their 3rd manager in 4 weeks.
Right.
This season, those same teams, they've played 3 away from home. How many points?
Is it none?
It's none.
Ah, no, yeah.
That's 1 point from 11 games. Like, that is staggeringly poor over a decent sample size.
Charlie, how ugly do you think this is going to get? Because United didn't just lose a match midweek, they also lost Harry Maguire and Luke Shaw. And, Bruno Fernandes, who admittedly didn't cover himself in glory in the 7-0 last March, is also out suspended.
Yeah. I think they'll lose comfortably. I saw somewhere they haven't scored at Anfield.
Yeah.
They haven't scored at Anfield since 2018 in
Really?
what was Mourinho's last game.
These games used to be so tight. Like, it was, back in the Ferguson era, even when Liverpool was struggling, there was always, they weren't particularly good games, but they would always be pretty close. And then, recently a lot of games between the big 6 have become a little bit basketball-y and back to, but that 7-0 last season, Liverpool were in a bad way at that point. And
even the one before that, they lost 4-0 during Ralph Rangnick's tenure.
Yeah. I think Ten Hag is going to try and use the Bayern blueprint and be ultra compact and have 3 holding midfielders, at least 2 very defensive ones, and not expose the back 4. Pretty depleted back 4, I should say. And Liverpool sometimes still find it hard to break down teams that sit very deep. We saw that against Luton, for example. So it's not going to be, I think, that easy until that first goal.
If United get a lead, they might better, batten down the hatches. But if Liverpool score first and early, then And it's obviously the new stand is partially open as well at Liverpool, so there'll be nearly 57,000 fans roaring them on. Well, not all.
Fans able to suck the ball in.
Yeah, from both ends.
Yeah. That might cancel itself out.
Oh yeah, just bobbing around the
the halfway line.
Yeah.
I mean, just on this game, that was quite. I saw somewhere suggested, and this is just a theory, but I thought it was interesting. Do you remember when United played Liverpool in what would have been Ten Hag's 3rd game, and United were coming into it off the back of 2 defeats, and so Ten Hag went a bit more pragmatic and just said, "Okay, let's try and get a result," which they did. But it's been suggested that kind of set a blueprint for, rather than kind of imposing a style of play, they've just tried to be a bit more kind of reactive and go from week to week. And I think there might be something in that, because they have just kind of looked a bit lacking an identity throughout. And when you hear managers, this has been a lot in the news recently because of Postecoglou being wedded to a way of playing, and people might think, well, come on, you've got to compromise. But there is a balance, because if you compromise too much, you're just left with kind of what Ten Hag's United are a bit. I just don't really know what they are, what they're trying to be. They're just a bit meh, yeah.
United,
and it can work against the lesser teams, in inverted commas, of the Premier League. But as soon as they go away against someone good, it all unravels.
But that's why it's so disappointing, because we saw some signs of improvement last year. They had better results. There was beginning to emerge, I think, an idea of what Ten Hag wanted to do. And then what we thought was, okay, 2nd season, more investment. He's going to shape the team around his ideas. He's influenced by Ajax. He was at Bayern when Guardiola was there. We thought this is going to be sort of the United that will emerge. But what he's done is, I think, in kind of desperation rather than then by design has gone back to being very pragmatic and trying to nick games on the break because he doesn't trust his team to be more expensive at this point.
It's another Man United crisis chat. Last season, of course, what was the catalyst for that run was getting rid of a ill-tempered Portuguese star. This time, Bruno Fernandes is out suspended. What does that actually mean in practical terms to Man United's options for this game?
I don't know.
Is it massive?
Well, I think it is significant, yeah. I mean, for all that he irritates people, he is very good and he's very important to how they play. But as Duncan says, they might just go more defensive, bring in another defensive midfielder in place of him. I mean, they might have some of those players missing from midweek back. I mean, Rashford was out ill, wasn't he? So
ill, but he hasn't featured either after, friction issues.
You look at the signings to Raf's point about the second season. Nana, we talked about Højlund's done okay in the Champions League, but hasn't scored yet in the Premier League. Mason Mount barely done anything. Amrabat came in and doesn't
Sancho.
Well, Sancho's
already there.
Yeah,
but I mean,
but last summer's signings as well. When you look at some of those, Anthony. I mean, that is a huge amount of money on somebody who's not very good. Casemiro, who was really good in parts last season, but hasn't been able to play the season, and that always felt a bit risky given the age he was at when they signed him.
The conversational black hole, the tractor beam of Man United misery sucking us in once again. Liverpool, top of the league. Mo Salah ready to go. Klopp, they'll be really looking forward to this game, Raf.
I don't think you ever really look forward to that kind of game.
No?
Even if you're huge favourites, because then the sorry, I'm struggling for the right word. Even if you're big favourites for the team, because then the possibility of failure and what it means becomes sort of more daunting. But yeah, I think Liverpool at the moment are happy to just go and outscore anyone. Whether that is the most promising strategy to win a big title, I'm not so sure. I'd like to see a bit more balance in the team. And I think the fact that they still haven't fully solved the holding midfield situation, Jurgen Klopp talking up Wataru Endo, but I'm still think he's not quite there yet. McAllister isn't a natural defensive midfielder. He's more of a number 8. And at times you see that Liverpool can't quite protect their back four as well as they want to. And when the guys up front are a little bit less on it when it comes to gegenpressing, which has been the case on some occasions, then they concede goals, and too many goals, I think, for Jurgen's liking.
Still, they're top of the league, and they're not playing early this weekend, so there's that. Put a smile on Jurgen's face.
Do you think that's funny?
Liverpool are trying to do something very unusual, almost unprecedented in Premier League history.
I'm quite unsettled by this.
Yeah, it was quite scary.
Yeah.
I mean, it's disrespectful.
Liverpool are trying to do something almost unprecedented, and that is win the Premier League playing Thursday night European football. Incredibly rare that happens. I think, and this is kind of off the top of my head, so people can correct me if it's wrong, it's happened once before. And that was in 2011-12 when Man City dropped out of the Champions League, went into the Europa League, played a couple of rounds there, and went on to still win the Premier League. So and obviously part of that, the reason that is because the best teams aren't in the Europa League. But it has tended to be a disadvantage for teams. So it'll be interesting to see how Liverpool manage that in the second half of the season.
All right.
Once they can't rotate quite so much, probably.
For now, they have that 1-point lead over Arsenal, who'll be hosting Brighton this weekend. Villa are close behind, 2 points off the top. They'll be visiting Brentford. City, who are now 4 points back, are hosting Crystal Palace. I mentioned the European champions making it 6 out of 6 midweek. No Erling Haaland in that game away at Crvena Zvezda. And still in doubt for this weekend, although Pep says that he should be fit for the Club World Cup, which they'll be jetting off to as soon as they've finished their business with Crystal Palace. Palace, actually, who've given City a scare or two. In fact, their recent record at the Etihad, in the last 5 visits, they've lost 2, drawn 1, and also won 2.
They were 2-0 up last season, weren't they? In the game they lost.
It ended 4-2 for City, but
still a scare. That counts as a scare.
That Andros Townsend goal there,
yes,
one of the all-time greats.
Excellent. All right, well, it'll be interesting to see how they get on in that before, as I say, heading off to Saudi Arabia for that business there. Arsenal.
Man City, sorry, just something on Man City. I saw this, that they don't play a team that's currently in the top half of the Premier League until March. So they are set fair. Given how efficient City normally are at putting away teams that they should put away, I do think their sort of distance from the top is maybe a little misleading, because I feel like they are one of those mad runs that they go on is brewing.
How many games will they be behind when they come back from the Club World Cup?
I don't know how many they miss. I mean, it's just one, isn't it? They miss Brentford at home. And that's the only one, which I guess for them is annoying. It means Tony will be back when they play it, but then maybe Haaland will be back.
Maybe Tony won't be at Brentford when they
Possibly
play that game. Not sure when it's rescheduled for. Arsenal, meantime, who are a point off the top, as we mentioned, host Brighton, who have actually won on their last 3 visits to the Emirates in all competitions, including a terrific result last May when they beat Arsenal 3-0. Arsenal haven't lost at the Emirates since then. The Seagulls, as we've all spotted, are not in the greatest of form themselves. They do have a key Thursday night game against Marseille. Is that home or away? Is that Velodrome? Home at the Amex.
There is a Velodrome in Brighton, Preston Park, but it's less impressive.
It's not there. Okay. But that's a match they have to win to top the group. Anyway, yeah. Any thoughts on Arsenal, Brighton?
Well, yeah, it is an interesting one because Brighton have done really well there, and even before then, they've got some wins before that current run of 3, and that one in May where they won 3-0. Brighton was superb. I mean, Brighton have this weird. I think every game in the Premier League this season they both scored and conceded, which is extraordinary. And Arsenal very rarely keep clean sheets at home in the league anyway. So you'd expect goals in it. I mean, Arsenal really need to win that to bounce back after losing to Villa and keep the pressure on Liverpool. But I think that will be a very good game to watch.
Okay. Villa themselves will be at Brentford Sunday at 2:00. Again, not on telly as that Arsenal one, for all that you might want to watch it, Charlie. No. But anyway, Villa at Brentford. They also are in Thursday night action. They've got Conference League. They're away in Bosnia against Zrinski.
Doing it for the coefficient.
Yeah,
Brave a point boys. To progress. Very good. What else is happening this weekend? Well, we'll talk about that next. Oh, it's December 14th, everybody. Happy Fabio Capello appointed England Manager Day to those who celebrate. You remember those brave days 16 years ago when the super successful, super disciplinarian Capello came in to whip the, let's be frank, spoiled Three Lions into shape. Yeah. They were spoiled. What did you think when you heard the news, Duncan? What dreams filled your young heart?
Well, it was very much that era when England just flitted between manager types. So at that point, it was deemed that we needed a harsh disciplinarian. And, you know, who better than Big Fab to come in with his index.
And it worked for the qualifying stages.
Yeah, they smashed
it. And how?
Yeah. Looked good against Platinum Stars in the build-up to the World Cup, but less so in the actual World Cup.
People say... We never saw the index ratings for his players.
We didn't. Huh. We did see them take on Algeria in possibly the worst England performance ever in the World Cup.
Yeah. Is it home or own? Is it home, he says? It's one of the great mysteries of our time. It's very weird, because it's quite a weird thing to say, I see your home fans booing you, which I think is what he says, but it's quite jarring.
But we know what he meant.
No. We know what he meant, yeah. But
that was also the game which saw the owl settling on the crossbar of the opposing team's goal. In my mind, anyway.
I'm not sure.
I don't remember that, but that sounds too weird for you to have made up.
England had to win, did they not?
No, second game in the group.
Was the second game?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do that again.
Was an
England facing Algeria, and so untroubled was the Algerian goal that I'm pretty sure some form of
ring a bell now you say
avian visitor settled on the crossbar and observed the distant proceedings.
And a Twitter account was probably set up for set out.
It was a real owler. Anyway, James, you were saying, was this the worst England performance ever in the World Cup?
Yeah.
2 games later.
I think it's up there.
Okay.
But I would propose that maybe England's win over Ecuador in 2006.
Yeah, that was grim.
That was bad.
Even worse. That's the only game I've ever seen live in the stadium where I fell asleep.
Well, really? I mean, so did some of the players. Wasn't that the game where Paul Robinson hit the Jumbotron with a kick? So that's right. Again, another
bit of football heritage.
And Beckham threw up on the pitch, which I think
and
was
scored
the
winner,
fitting,
to be fair, didn't
was
he?
the fitting description of what was being shown.
But I mean, Rafa, you could have rubbed it in our face even more. 2 games after this Algeria game was the Germany 4-1 defeat, which was also pretty ropey.
VAR.
Yes.
Goal line
Well,
technology.
goal- yeah.
Goal line technology, anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Frankie Lamps,
Yeah.
just slightly over the
Yeah,
line.
but England weren't that bad in the first half.
First half.
Second
yeah,
half, yes, things fell apart.
Second half, things unravelled.
Very nice, Duncan. Shall we return to the other delights that await us in matchday 17 of the Premier League, which begins actually on Friday night? Nottingham Forest will be hosting Spurs. Forest, who are uncomfortably close to the bottom three. I would suggest they're only 5 points now above 18th place Luton. Spurs, up at the other end, lying 3 points off the top four, which is a kind of legacy nomenclature that I cling to. Bit of history to this one. You're thinking 1991 FA Cup final rematch, Clough against Venables, Gaza doing his knee with that tackle. Yeah. I'm also thinking about
For me, yeah.
yeah, the fixture in faraway 2022, when, do you recall,
Oh,
Spurs are
disgusting.
2-0 up
Absolutely
and
disgusting.
Richarlison decides it's time to juggle the ball on the sideline and the Forest players exact their revenge.
Wasn't it Brennan Johnson?
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, that was such a ridiculous furore. Like,
Yeah, that was a
you
great
know,
furore.
the proper,
Really? Which bit was ridiculous?
well, the proper football men emerging from hedges immediately, saying that this is the.
But what was good about it as well was the narrative was kind of like, yeah, well, Richarlison got his comeuppance, he got kicked. It was kind of like, he did exactly what he wanted. He was
Yeah.
doing it to wind people
And
up.
also,
and he
you,
served
men-
that purpose.
you mentioned Gaza.
Yes.
Like, if there's videos of someone like Gaza doing that in the 90s or 80s, everyone's like, look, the football's better then. when someone does it now, it's like, it's disgusting. But the game's gone. Like, just some consistency, please.
All right.
Around showboating.
Or common sense.
Yeah? Yeah.
Richarlison and Brennan Johnson, as you mentioned, should both be involved in this fixture on Friday night. Brennan Johnson now turning out for the other side. Has it gone under the radar that he's been really good for Spurs recently?
He has been good. He's an interesting player. I mean, he seems very smart and takes up really good positions, and he's getting chances and things like that. I think if he can add a more clinical edge to his game, he hit the woodwork twice against Newcastle. It feels like it could click for him. It hasn't quite yet. Just the one goal. But no, he looks like he'll understand the system well, and he is a threat. But yeah, once some of these start going in, I think that'll make a big difference to his confidence.
Okay, Spurs may need that because, of course, at the moment they're very reliant on the goals of Son Heung-min, 10 in his last 13, and he will be off to the Asian Cup in January for could be up to a month.
Yeah, depending on how they do, which you'd think would be pretty well, unfortunately for Spurs.
All right. Steve Cooper still in charge of Forest. Long may that continue, say many Forest fans. They have had back home defeats. We'll see how this one goes Friday evening.
Traditionally a tough place to go, but they have lost a couple there at home recently, haven't they?
Yeah. Yeah, back-to-back home defeats after losing just 2 of the previous 20 at the City Ground. Just a point behind Forest coming into this round of matches are Everton, a team who themselves have 3 straight victories and, perhaps more importantly, a fire of righteous indignation burning in their bellies. Also, a team that has a 5:30 tea time, prime time slot on telly against Burnley for Sean Dyche's return to Turf Moor.
Looking forward to this.
Are you?
Yeah, it's going to remind me of the Nicolas Cage vehicle Face Off.
Face Off.
2 things you used to think you knew swapped around.
Right.
You know.
So you're saying that Burnley are now...
John Travolta
Yeah.
and
But Burnley have adopted almost Evertonian
a
entertaining
more
style?
sort of established Premier League style, should we say?
Uh-huh.
And Everton are very much, going
Right.
from the Dyche playbook.
There's not much that's looking established in Premier League about Burnley, although they have had a slight uptick in fortune
Yeah.
today.
They look all right.
Okay.
If it's
Yeah.
if it's really football's version of Face Off, it'll feature a lot of pigeons, of course.
Were there a lot of pigeons?
Yeah, every John Woo film
Oh,
has a
of course. Of course.
famous pigeon shootout.
Yeah.
Some of Burnley's playing out from the back has looked like they're. Hang on. Was it that film where they've got magnetised boots in the prison? I think it is.
No, that's
Is
Con
that
Air.
Con Air, right? Yeah, all right. Is it?
Yeah.
All right. Forgot that.
Another Nick Cage.
I was getting my Nick Cages
Classic.
mixed
Nick
up.
Similar
Cage
era.
in a twist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. Well, that seems to be our Burnley-Everton chat, but
And I think we should pay
Yep.
tribute to what Dyche has done in the,
Yes.
Everton have got, goals per 100 set pieces. They lead the Premier League this season. They're incredibly fit. They kind of, I think people don't praise Dyche enough for it. People know what he's going to do to a team, but he does still do it.
But they'd be 10th without that points deduction.
Indeed. And I think what people thought he was going to do to Everton is not actually what seems to be happening. They seem to be a more expansive, creative team than we're used to seeing from him. Would you say that's fair?
I think they're still playing fairly direct, but they are doing it well. And, you know, he's concentrated a lot on fitness and, you know, actually keeping Calvert-Lewin fit and effective that's almost a managerial miracle anyway. So, and it is very easy. It's quite handy they got deducted 10 points because it's quite an easy number to add on to the total.
Very much so.
9 would have been a bit annoying.
Indeed. Everton won't have Jared Branthwaite. He's suspended.
That is a loss.
And also Idrissa Gueye is also out. So that may play a part in the outcome of that game. We'll find out.
I mean, we don't know, I haven't looked at the weather report, but obviously Dyche in the snow at Turf Moor is one of the great images of Premier League era. So.
Shirt sleeves, do you think?
Yeah, it was in his shirt sleeves.
Bottom of the table are Sheffield. They'll be visiting Chelsea, who are now 12th. Oh, yeah. Bottom of the table are Sheffield United. They visit Chelsea, who are now 12th. Luton, also in the bottom three, are at Bournemouth. First ever meeting between these two clubs, Bournemouth and Luton, Raphael. You'll be intrigued to know. Cherry's very much a formed team.
In the Premier League.
Yeah.
First ever top flight meeting in the Premier League.
Trust me, they played a lot of games.
Okay, let's go again. Bottom of the table are Sheffield United, who will be visiting Chelsea, who are now 12th. Luton, who are also in the bottom three now, are at Bournemouth for what is the first ever Premier League meeting between these two clubs. That's Saturday at 3 o'clock. You can't watch it.
I mean, Chelsea they referencing Everton's points deduction again, taking that into account. 5 teams have picked up fewer points than Chelsea this season. If we say that, you know, Everton picked up more and then got them taken away, that is staggering. 5 teams, 3 of whom are the promoted teams who.
So they would be 15th without that points deduction.
Well, goal difference would mean they're higher.
Okay, all right,
but yeah, it's pretty desperate.
Okay,
Chelsea have won 9 league games this year, which is 1 more than Wout Weghorst. So they got that at least.
Will they make it 10 this weekend when they
This
host
calendar
Sheffield
year,
United? Chris Wilder, can he make it 3 defeats in a row for Pochettino?
He's got it in his locker.
Chris Wilder was the manager for Pochettino's final game at Spurs.
Is that right? What happened in that one?
They drew 1-1.
Okay. What do you think, Raph? Do you fancy the Blades to cause further disruption
Every
at Stamford
time
Bridge?
I'm thinking Chelsea are beginning to get their act together, and surely a team coached by Pochettino with so many individual players of quality cannot play as badly, then they plumb new depths. On that basis, I'd probably expect them to bounce back and show reaction and win this game. I think Christopher Nkunku coming in will be, unlike Onana, a very positive, transformative.
Do you think he might feature this weekend already?
I think he's very close. Very close. I think he is so good that he will make single-handedly a massive difference, even though attacking players have had a really hard time making any sort of impact at Chelsea for the last, 2 years. Feels like a long time.
Long old
Since Didier Drogba
Shevchenko.
left. Yeah.
Fernando Torres.
Anyway, I got a feeling that maybe the Chelsea renaissance and fight back will start this weekend.
This weekend against the re-energized Chris Wilder Blades. We shall see. As I mentioned, the other game featuring a bottom 3 side is Luton's trip to Bournemouth, who are very much in form. 5 wins in their last 7. Dominic Solanke averaging a goal every 2 games. Should be a good one, that, do you think?
I mean, we should point out that a few weeks ago, some people were saying, was Derby's 11-point record under threat this season? Well, by the end of this weekend, all the bottom 3 could have 11 points or more. So no one will ever beat that Derby record. Yeah. It's unbeatable.
West Ham Wolves is the televised game Sunday at 2 o'clock.
9th through 13th.
9th through 13th, yeah. West Ham Wolves is the televised game, meantime, Sunday, 2 o'clock, getting us warmed up, fluffing us up for
the
Liverpool Man United.
It's a good little amuse-bouche.
Go on then.
Well, I say, it's quite good. I mean, I think you made the point earlier, and I think it is actually a key thing that if a team's been on telly a lot recently, it does kind of, you want a bit of a variety, don't you? But
I mean, fresh from West Ham Palace, do we need West Ham Wolves?
I don't think we do.
Arguably not.
You know, it could turn out to be the game of the round, although West Ham will be coming off Thursday night football. They're hosting Freiburg.
We should probably celebrate Raul Jimenez's long-awaited return to form.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we did on Sunday night stroke Monday morning, but yeah, it really does look like he's back. It's 4-3 or something crazy like that.
3-2 in the Premier League.
Similar numbers.
Yeah, very similar.
Not necessarily in that order. But
He's looking to score in 3 consecutive league games for the first time since November 2019, the third game of which was against Eddie Howe's Bournemouth.
Oh my goodness! Look at you. You came correct with your stats. Are Fulham going to inflict further misery on the Magpies this weekend?
Well, you'd imagine so, given how Newcastle have been defending.
And they have looked so fatigued. They definitely got it up, if you'll excuse the expression, for Wednesday's game at St James's Park. But with that gone, the deflation could be a very flat atmosphere there. Or maybe not. The Geordies may be roaring their boys on.
Got it up, but just couldn't keep it up.
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it? Fulham, there you go.
Yeah, Newcastle 7 points off top 4. They need something.
Okay. Where are Fulham now?
10th.
Probably the most under-the-radar team in the Premier League this season, I'd say. Just
Yeah.
because they're just, you know...
Where's the radar?
The radar is in the River Thames near Fulham's
But
ground.
when you say under the radar, that suggests that they've been kind of like tunnelling under the rest and now going to pop up in the top 4. But they're 10th, Duncan.
Yeah, but they're playing well. They could go on a little run,
Yeah.
get 5th.
Yeah, well, if that
Back
happens,
to back
then they
5
will
0
be under the radar.
That took them. The radar picked that up, didn't it? But I know what you mean. And even last season they were a story for a bit, but then they were safe.
nowhere, and now we're noticing the fact that they're 10th.
Yeah, but they're the coming force in England.
Okay, yeah.
In West London.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true, actually. There's a little cluster of West London. 10th, 11th, 12th is.
They're ahead of Brentford?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
they
top
are the
team.
kings of West London, right?
Boom.
Maybe they should combine, have an 18-team Premier League, help the England team.
All right. Happy now, producer Charlie? There you go. So that's coming up. And is that on telly? No.
No. I think that's it.
But you can watch it via the medium of highlights or kind of full match playbacks available on many broadcasting
go to the game.
Or you can go to the game, although good luck getting a ticket. Where is it? Is it Newcastle?
It's at Newcastle.
Like Newcastle. Sorry, this is incredibly woolly. I'll go again. So that's coming up. So that's coming up on when, Charlie?
On Saturday at 3 p.m.
Saturday, 3 p.m. Excellent. Enjoy it if you're able to see it or get along to the game at St James's. We, of course, will be running up the Premier League action straight after the final whistle of Liverpool Man United on Sunday evening. That will be with you very late Sunday, probably early Monday morning. So I do hope you'll be joining us for that. For now, many, many thanks to you, Raphael Honigstein, Duncan Alexander, Charlie. Give our regards to Big Ange.
Will do.
To producer Charlie and Rachel in the booth. And to you, listener and viewer. We'll see you soon. For now, from all of us here, it's goodbye. The Totally Football Show podcast is available 3 times a week, bringing you all the football news you could reasonably be expected to care about. We've got views, we've got stats, we've got analysis, we've got some of the best football writers around, and the whole thing is absolutely free. So have a listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or all the usual places by clicking on the link below.